She was on the phone with her best friend when she said the sentence that would end up deciding a man's entire future. "I know you put something in my drink." 24 years old, 5 months pregnant, a daughter already named. And in that moment, alone in her own apartment with the father of her unborn child, she was accusing him, out loud, in real time, of poisoning her. Within 90 minutes, she would be unconscious. Within days, she would be gone. And within her would go a baby girl who never got to take a single breath. This is a story about a normal date night that turned into a crime scene. About a mother in Arkansas who will tell you, on record, that everything she did in life, she did for her daughter. About a young chef with a whole future in front of her who noticed something was wrong, said so, and named a name. It took the justice system over 3 years to catch up to what she already knew in that apartment. Stick with me to the end, because the way this case was finally cracked open involves one doctor's gut instinct, a blood sample nobody thought to save, and a betrayal that goes back years before that night. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel breaks down real criminal cases the way they actually happened. No dramatization, no guessing, just the facts, the testimony, and the verdict. If that's your kind of content, there's a subscribe button right there, and I promise you, it helps this channel more than you'd think. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand why this case is so disturbing, you need to understand who she was before any of this happened. Let's call her Jade, born in the spring of 1998 in Little Rock, Arkansas. By every account from the people who knew her, she was the center of her mother's entire world. Not in a dramatic, exaggerated way, just in the plain, everyday way that only children sometimes are. She started cheerleading at 7 years old and never really stopped. By high school, she was team captain, twice. Junior varsity, then varsity. She graduated in 2016 with the kind of drive that made people notice her. But here's the thing that actually defined her life: food. She went to culinary school, graduated in 2020, became a head pastry chef, started her own catering business before most people her age had figured out what they wanted to do at all. And then, at the end of 2022, she did what a lot of ambitious young people eventually do. She packed up and moved to a bigger city to chase the career she actually wanted: Nashville. Here's a question for you. If your daughter told you she was moving 4 states away to start over, would you be excited for her or terrified? Because her mother was both. Drop a comment and tell me what you'd have done. She wasn't running from her family, though. She landed a job at a well-known Nashville restaurant, and it wasn't even random. Her stepmother had a personal connection there through her brother, one of the co-owners. It felt like fate smiling on her a little. She had a little stepsister she adored, 7 years old, with Down syndrome. A mother she texted constantly, so close they shared a phone passcode. A best friend she'd known almost her whole life. She wasn't a woman moving away from everyone who loved her. She was a woman surrounded by them. Now let's talk about the man who would come to define the worst chapter of her life. He had a completely different kind of profile. The son of a well-known college football coach. He'd played defensive back in college himself, was a 2-time team captain, set records as a punt returner. After his playing days ended, he worked as a scout for an NFL team for a few years. On paper, accomplished, well-connected, no criminal record. The kind of resume that makes people assume good character. They matched on a dating app in early 2022. According to accounts later given in court, it was casual from the start. Both of them were seeing other people. Nothing about those first few months looked like the beginning of a tragedy. Then, at the end of September 2022, everything changed. She found out she was pregnant. She told her mother almost immediately, within about a day of that first positive test. The same way they told each other everything, over the phone, with a photo sent mid-call. For her, there was no hesitation. Her family later testified that abortion was never something she considered. This was her baby, a daughter, and she was going to have her. On November 4th, she told him. According to what she relayed to her mother afterward, the conversation did not go how she hoped. He told her that if she kept the baby, he wanted nothing to do with it. Didn't want it to carry his name. Didn't want the child to ever know who he was. Pause for a second and ask yourself this. If the father of your child told you he wanted nothing to do with your baby, what would you do next? She didn't fight. She didn't beg. She sent him a message releasing him from any obligation. He'd said how he felt, so she'd respect it. She would raise this child on her own if she had to, and she would love her unconditionally either way. Her family closed ranks around her immediately. Everyone made clear this baby would be provided for, loved, wanted, no matter what he decided. Then, right around New Year's, something shifted. On January 1st, he reached back out. They met at a park, talked for hours, agreed to try to get to know each other again, to co-parent if the baby turned out to be his. On the surface, it looked like a man coming around, a father-to-be having a change of heart. But prosecutors would later argue that underneath that surface, something very different was being decided. For the rest of the pregnancy, she did everything right. Her doctor would later testify, under oath, that she never missed a single prenatal appointment, that the pregnancy was progressing completely normally, that she never once expressed hesitation about becoming a mother. No drugs, no alcohol, no smoking. When one early ultrasound flagged something minor, she got extra genetic testing done immediately, and it came back clean. She learned the baby was a girl, and by every witness account, she was overjoyed. She spent hours on the phone with her mother, sending Facebook Marketplace links back and forth, buying nursery furniture in 2 different cities at once. She recorded little pregnancy update videos, 19 weeks, 20 weeks, narrating the whole journey. She was planning 2 separate baby showers. She'd already picked out the name, Ivy. She kept the pregnancy off social media. Her mother later said this was specifically because he had asked her not to post about it yet. She was going to make the announcement public on her 25th birthday, March 6th, at a dinner she'd already reserved. She had a plan for her whole life, a career, a daughter, a birthday celebration to reveal it all. She never made it to that birthday dinner. On the evening of February 25th, 2023, she planned something small and sweet, a quiet date night at her apartment. She was a chef, so naturally there was food involved. She'd also set out canvases, paint, and brushes on the kitchen island. The plan was to paint pieces for the nursery together. He was there, and for part of the evening, so were 2 other people, her lifelong best friend, and a friend of that friend's from dental school, who had never even met him before. That second friend would later describe the scene as completely ordinary, calm, some small talk, some catching up, nothing that raised any alarm. At first, he noticed the canvases and asked what everyone was going to paint. She said she wanted to paint a butterfly, apparently her favorite thing. Then someone asked her boyfriend what he was going to paint. Here's the detail that this witness could never quite shake from his memory. The answer was something dark, something like, and this is close to a direct quote, an ominous, dark image, maybe a dark hole, something like that. At the time, it probably felt like nothing, a weird joke, an off note in an otherwise normal evening. In hindsight, it's the kind of detail that makes your skin crawl. The witness also remembered the drinks that night, something pink, some kind of juice drink, offered around. He declined his. He and the best friend left after 30 or 40 minutes. When they walked out the door, by his account, she was happy, bubbly. Nothing seemed wrong at all. Would you have noticed anything strange in that room? Comment below, because almost nobody there did, until it was already too late. Within about 90 minutes of her friends leaving, everything fell apart. She called her best friend on the phone. What that friend overheard next became the single most important piece of evidence in this entire case, because it wasn't a story told secondhand later. It was her own voice, live, describing what was happening to her as it happened. She could be heard accusing him directly, saying her drink tasted wrong, that she couldn't feel her legs, that she couldn't walk straight. And then, the line that would end up read aloud in a courtroom years later, accusing him of doing this on purpose, so that something would happen to her baby. Her voice got weaker. She said she was about to pass out. Then the call went quiet. Before we go any further into what happened next, the 911 call, the paramedics, and what investigators found when they got that toxicology report back. If you're finding this case as unsettling as I did researching it, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it lets me know you want more cases covered like this one. Okay, back to the story. Here's something you need to sit with for a second. When he finally called 911 that night, he didn't tell the dispatcher that his pregnant girlfriend had just accused him of poisoning her drink. He told them she was having an allergic reaction. When the dispatcher asked about classic allergic reaction symptoms, swelling, hives, a rash, he said she had none of those, just that she was unresponsive and vomiting. The first paramedics through the door found something that did not look like any allergic reaction. When they turned her over, she had vomited a pink, frothy substance, a detail that, to trained paramedics, meant something very different was going on. They asked him basic medical questions. He knew she was pregnant, but couldn't say how far along. He offered almost no medical history. He just kept repeating one explanation, that she'd eaten bad food. Then, according to sworn testimony, something happened that every first responder on that scene remembered clearly. As paramedics tried to move her to begin resuscitation, he got in the way, stayed too close, interfered enough that they physically could not do their job properly in that apartment. They had to rush her into the ambulance just to get the space to work on her. By the time they got a reading, her Glasgow coma score, the standard scale used to measure consciousness, was a 3. That's the lowest score possible on that scale. No pulse, no blood pressure. She was rushed to the hospital. Her unborn daughter died 2 days later. Her mother, who had worked in a hospital emergency room for over 2 decades and understood exactly what the doctors were telling her, knew there was nothing left to be done for either of them. The family made the decision to take her off life support on March 6, 2023, her 25th birthday, the same day she had planned to finally announce her pregnancy to the world. They brought balloons and cupcakes into that hospital room because it was still her birthday, and then they let her go. I want you to just pause on that for a second before we move forward. Type "still her birthday" in the comments if that hit you the way it hit me. Here's where the case takes a turn that almost never happens in stories like this. Because her death was sudden and unexplained, the medical examiner's office got involved before she had even passed away. The examiner in charge made an unusual call. She asked the hospital to preserve the very first blood sample drawn when she'd arrived that night, hours before her death, because she had a hunch that toxicology was going to matter enormously. That single decision is the reason this case was ever solvable at all. An initial urine screen came back positive for cocaine, but when the medical examiner tested that preserved early blood sample and calculated the full picture, accounting for how the drug breaks down in the body over time, the number she got back was staggering, nearly 8,000 nanograms per milliliter. To put that in perspective, this examiner had personally signed off on close to 300 cocaine-related cases in her career. The overwhelming majority of fatal levels she'd ever seen were under 1,000. In her entire career, she could find exactly one case anywhere near this level, and that one involved someone who had swallowed cocaine while being processed into a jail, trying to hide it from officers. And that detail mattered for a second reason. Most people who die from cocaine have smoked it, snorted it, or injected it. She had swallowed it. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as acute cocaine toxicity. But, and this is important, because it's exactly the gap the entire trial would end up fighting over, she could not, from the autopsy alone, prove who had put it there. She listed the manner of death as undetermined, not because she didn't have suspicions. In her own words, everything investigators found showed no history of drug use. Someone who, the moment she found out she was pregnant, did everything right to protect that baby. It didn't fit the profile of an accidental overdose at all. It looked, to her, far more like someone had given it to her without her knowledge. But suspicion isn't proof, and that gap between what the science could show and what it could only imply is exactly the space where this entire case would eventually be won or lost. So here's a question for you before we go further. If you were on that jury and all you had was a shocking toxicology number and no smoking gun, would that be enough for you to convict? Let me know in the comments, and let's see if your answer changes by the end of this video. After it happened, he moved out of state. For a long time, publicly at least, nothing happened. The medical examiner had a shocking number and an unresolved manner of death. The family had a certainty they couldn't yet prove, and the man they suspected was building a new life hundreds of miles away. But behind the scenes, detectives were working. They built a full timeline. The time-stamped photos from that night, the phone call to her best friend, the moment paramedics arrived to find her already without a pulse. A homicide detective would later testify that the scene looked like it had been partially cleaned up and that a cup was missing entirely. Investigators also found something else, a witness from his past whose account would end up reframing the entire case. It took a full year. In March 2024, a grand jury indicted him. U.S. Marshals arrested him in a Walmart parking lot in another state. He was extradited back, held on a multi-million-dollar bond, which he eventually posted, and placed under GPS monitoring while he awaited trial. He pleaded not guilty to everything. When the trial finally opened in the summer of 2026, both sides told the jury a completely different story about the same set of facts. The prosecution's theory was simple and devastating. He did not want this child, so he laced her drink with cocaine and alcohol and watched what happened. To back that up, they called a woman who had dated him years earlier, back in 2017. She testified that during that relationship, he had gotten another woman pregnant, and that he had searched online for ways to end a pregnancy, and had actually asked her to help him get pills so he could slip them into that other woman's drink without her knowledge. Prosecutors argued this wasn't a coincidence, separated by 6 years. It was a method, a pattern he'd tried before and refined. A former co-worker testified he had made clear, more than once, that he did not want to become a father anytime soon, and her own mother told the jury exactly what her daughter had told her, that he wanted nothing to do with the baby, and didn't want the child carrying his name. The defense's strategy did not deny that she had died after that night. Instead, it attacked the chain connecting him to her death, on multiple fronts at once. First, the investigation itself. An investigator admitted on the stand that the apartment hadn't been secured properly. Homicide detectives didn't arrive until the next day. In that gap, friends of the family had gone inside. One admitted, while wearing gloves, to removing a comforter from the bed that appeared to have vomit on it. Food left out on the counter was never tested at all. The defense argued the entire scene had been compromised before real investigators ever got there. Second, the medical evidence. The defense called their own toxicologist and an ER doctor, who argued there may have been fentanyl in her system as well, and that her symptoms looked at least as consistent with a fentanyl overdose as with cocaine. Under cross-examination, though, prosecutors pointed out this ER doctor wasn't a forensic pathologist or toxicologist by training, and even the defense's own hired toxicologist wouldn't concede the core point the defense needed to win. Third, and maybe the most human argument of all, he was the one who called 911. He stayed at the hospital. He answered when her mother called, looking for updates. He cooperated with police that same night. His lawyers pointed to things like him signing up for a baby diaper subscription as evidence he was preparing to be a father, not planning to prevent one. And they reminded the jury, correctly, that the medical examiner herself had never officially classified this as a homicide. He chose not to testify in his own defense. So, knowing both sides now, where do you land? Type your verdict in the comments before I tell you what the jury decided. I want to see how many of you get it right. Closing arguments came down to one shared point of agreement and one massive point of disagreement. Both sides agreed this was a tragedy. They completely disagreed on whether it was murder. The prosecution's closing returned, one final time, to her own voice. The words she said out loud while she still could, accusing him of doing this on purpose. The defense asked the jury to set emotion aside completely and warned against letting grief and sympathy override the burden of proof. The jury, 4 men and 8 women, deliberated for just over 2 hours. On July 1st, 2026, they returned 4 guilty verdicts: second-degree murder for her, first-degree premeditated murder, and additional felony murder counts for her unborn daughter, guilty on every single count. It had taken the jury a little over 2 hours to reach a decision that had taken the rest of the world more than 3 years to arrive at. At sentencing, prosecutors argued for aggravating factors, including that one of the victims had not yet been born, legally treated under the statute as a person under 12. Family members spoke about what her absence had done to them. Her mother described feeling guilty every single Mother's Day that her son was still there and her daughter wasn't. Her sister talked about no longer having her big sister around. The defense asked for mercy, not freedom, because that was never realistically on the table, but at least the distant possibility of parole. His attorney laid out the math bluntly. The best case outcome was still 60 years, with parole eligibility only after roughly 51 years served. He would be in his 80s before he'd even have the chance to ask. He was offered the chance to speak to the court before sentencing. He declined. The jury recommended life imprisonment on each of the 3 first-degree murder counts. Under the law where this took place, that meant a minimum of 51 years served before any possibility of parole. Outside the courthouse, her father spoke about the end of an agonizingly long wait. Her mother described years of what she called silent pain, finally giving way to something like relief. His defense team said they respectfully disagreed with the verdict and planned to appeal, maintaining that he is innocent, and adding that while they understood the family's grief, imprisoning an innocent man would be its own tragedy. A hearing to finalize remaining sentencing details was set for later that year. It's easy, with a case like this, to get lost in the mechanics. The toxicology numbers, the legal terminology, the appeal that's still pending. So let's strip all of that away for a second. What's left is very small and very simple. A young woman moved to a new city to build a life around the thing she loved most: cooking. She found out she was going to have a daughter, and she decided, without a single moment of hesitation, that she wanted her, no matter what anyone else chose to do. She spent her last healthy weeks trading furniture links with her mom and planning to paint a butterfly for a nursery that would never get used. She had already picked out a name. She died on her 25th birthday, in a hospital room her family filled with balloons, because it was still, somehow, her birthday. And the person responsible wasn't a stranger. He was the father of that child, the man she had let back into her life so they could raise their daughter together. She noticed something was wrong that night, and she said so, out loud, by name, while she still had the breath left to do it. It just took the rest of the world 3 years to catch up to what she already knew. If this case affected you the way it affected me putting it together, let me know in the comments what stuck with you most. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss the next case we cover. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.